we want to have our assets on all possible networks, right? Us running validators, running infrastructure is part of our commitment, to grow together with the network and to also really understand Web3 technology itself.
Don't worry, we are friends.
Welcome back to the FRENS VALIDATOR YouTube channel. This is a YouTube channel you should subscribe to if you want to learn more about the staking revolution that is on the horizon. And today I'm very, very pleased to welcome Vodafone to the show with Adilah and Antonio. They both work for Vodafone, and today we will talk about the journey that Vodafone is taking in the Web3 landscape, but also more specifically in the staking industry. But before we dive deeper into all of these details, Adilah, Antonio, welcome to the show. It's such a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you.
Thank you
very much.
Thank you for being here and being invited.
Yeah, the pleasure is 100% mine. And before we dive deeper into all of the details and all of the exciting stuff that you guys are working on, I think it would make a lot of sense if we start at the beginning to get everyone on one page. So when and how did Vodafone actually observe the Web3 landscape? So when was the first aha moment for you guys to say, okay, Web3 or crypto in general is a thing. There is also something besides Bitcoin. So when did the first thought pieces start about crypto and entering this landscape?
So actually, Vodafone started looking at blockchain and Web3, I think around 2017, 2018. So I think around 2018, we had set up something like a global blockchain steering group. So that's a steering group at the group level. So it's across all of the different companies in Vodafone as well, right? So at that time, we were working with group technology, right, in the architecture team. So we were looking a lot at like different protocols, blockchain technology, private and also public chains, and I think at that period, that was the period where a lot of enterprises started coming into blockchain and Web3 as well. But they were coming in from a private enterprise perspective, right? So you had the Hyperledger stuff, you had the Corda stuff, you had all of these like private protocols, right? That a lot of companies experimented with, made a lot of prototypes, tested like different use cases with blockchain. So Vodafone also started at that time looking at it. And I think we also spent a lot of time looking at Ethereum as well. Actually, me and Tony and our architecture lead, I spent like a whole day looking through Ethereum, and also I think we had like a long discussion about CryptoKitties. We actually went through all the CryptoKitties smart contracts, and I remember he was like, "What the hell is this?"
Yeah.
It was just that period.
But I think CryptoKitties was, I think, one of the major things where he get to his boss and said like, yeah, we need to do this. And I think this was one of the key elements that we went there. And then at the end, in the same year, we created the blockchain strategy where we wanted to continue. And as in other enterprises, it's normal that it's not, for the beginning, you see like a lot of flowers, they're just growing. Maybe not in a controlled way, but they're growing. And that's where you see like entities like Vodafone Germany creating projects, or Vodafone UK or the global one creating projects by itself. And that's how it grows actually. And then you have like a lot of flowers on a big, green field. And what is our job then to orchestrate it a little bit more.
Yeah, I see. So in the beginning, it's more like experimenting with the most craziest thing and then see what's coming out of it. And then further down the road, things are getting more concrete. But now things are a little bit more concrete, so to speak. So I would like to split this up really quick into two parts here. So there's like the hardware side of things and there is the software side of things. Obviously, as a staking show, we will focus on the software side of things, but just for people's understanding that there's more behind the curtain at Vodafone. So as far as I understood it right, there are also developments on the way with SIM cards. So that the SIM card, so that there is like kind of a hardware infrastructure given for mass adoption, so that everyone can participate in the Web3 language with their mobile phone. And then there is the software side of things. So could you like briefly touch base on what Vodafone is experimenting here with SIM cards, Tony?
So what we see, we are building like a module on the SIM trust part. So where we're going to connect like devices here with the real world, and then the plan was like to get customer on board who going to use this devices, and our goal is then to put it like on the chain by the end of the day.
I see. Yeah, and also Hetzner, one of the famous server providers for most of the validators in Europe, at least. But yeah, then there is, besides that, there's also the other part of the story. So there's also the part of the story that Vodafone itself wants to be a provider for networks, similar to what we at FRENS Validator also do. So yeah, Adi, could you like maybe talk a little bit about this? So Tony mentioned in the beginning you were like testing a lot of things, and is this something that became more concrete now?
So this is definitely something that is a lot more concrete, right? And this activity, there was a lot of discussions internally in Vodafone about where this activity should sit. And right now it's sitting with the project that we're on, which is digital asset broker. And I think if you just step back and look at the telco from a product and services perspective, that providing this kind of services is actually what a telco does, right? A telco provides connectivity. It provides mobile connectivity. It provides landed connectivity. So why not provide connectivity at the Web3 layer, right? At the blockchain layer. So that's also a kind of connectivity as well. So from that perspective, I think it's not like a huge paradigm shift from providing like your own network connectivity to providing connectivity on Web3, right, on networks. So I think that helped make it a lot easier to have these conversations within Vodafone about doing this, right, about running infrastructure, because in the end we are running another connectivity infrastructure. And so from an idea perspective, it kind of makes sense. So within digital asset broker, there are two parts in the thinking about running this infrastructure, right? It's not just running the infrastructure as an infrastructure provider. It's running the infrastructure as part of the core product, right? Which is providing connectivity for devices on chain in a secure and trusted way, right? So we are coming into networks with like 2 points of view, not just from we want to run the infrastructure, but also from the point of view that can we be part of this ecosystem? Can we grow with this ecosystem and combine our digital asset broker ecosystem of devices with the network itself, right? So that's like one of the drivers behind the decision making of why do we join this network or why do we be part of certain networks, right? But at a fundamental level, we want to be as interoperable as possible, right? The devices that we want to provision on the network to put on chain, we don't want them to be stuck in just one network. We want them to be able to move across networks, right? And that's like the main idea behind it. So I guess it's a bit far-fetched to say we want to run all the networks, but in a way, like we want to have our assets on all possible networks, right? Us running validators, running infrastructure is part of our commitment, to grow together with the network and to also really understand Web3 technology itself.
Yeah, I think what's important to say, we want to help. So we want to understand the network because, as you see, every network by itself has a different kind of culture. So first, we want to join the culture and see, like, hey, does it actually make sense? It's like you choose a partner. It's like you have some kind of requirements, and you need to see does it make a fit or not. And in this case, we are starting with the validator part to get into the community, because if you're a big brand, you as well have like a reputation, what is behind you, and that's where this kind of like first phase is important to us to understand how's the governance at the protocol, how are the structures there, and this for us the first step to understand. And it's not only as Adi mentioned, we don't only want to run the validators, we want to put our application on the chain, and I think this is one, if you look at other telco operators, this is the where we want to be different than the others. Come with the use case, and then the validator part should come as a first step.
I think this is so beautiful to hear, because it really also reminds me of like telecommunication in general, that you say, okay, cross communication is the key here. Because if we look at a global landscape, I mean, obviously, I would say most of the telecommunication is happening like in the US, in the Western world, but no matter where you are, you will always find like a small gift shop where you can buy a small SIM card powered by Vodafone. So it's like really about connecting everything. And I think we now see this also in the Web3 landscape here, and you decide very carefully, okay, which chains you guys want to support. But yeah, let's talk a little bit about this process. So now that you understood, okay, we want to be part of this staking industry, staking sector. So Tony, you mentioned you get into the culture and see if it generally makes sense. But what does this precisely mean? Are you just reading the white papers and then you go to the conferences and then you say, okay, let's do it? Or is there, as an enterprise, more behind it? So what is the process here? Because usually it's like not that hard to set up a validator, no?
Yeah, so
I'm laughing because I'm sorry. It's because like, oh my god, I'm going to you answer. I'm laughing because it's a huge process for us actually.
Yeah. Yeah, for Cosmos, for example, we are talking to the validators up front to check it a little bit. So what I do is like simply check into the protocols, who are the players there, and doing some kind of like, yeah, just like normal going on Telegram, on the Discords, and on the Slacks of this words, and have a look at as well, followed by the conferences, to get like the feeling is like, how is it operating? For us, it's not like a normal human being just like install a application for the validator and having a node running maybe by an RPC endpoint. For us, is a bit more. Every time we want to get into the or onboard to a protocol, we need to talk to our business. We need to do a little business case. We need to have a look which processes needs to be done. We need the business buy-in. We need legal. We need as well, if you want to work with the protocol, you need something like a due diligence. So legal is actually asking who are the people you're talking to, and then sometimes it's not that easy to answer this, and then you need to like have like half a year to 1 year to like only get to it. Then you have regulatory issues like the wallets, who can hold crypto, how long can you hold crypto, which entity is holding crypto, as well. How we're going to do the strategy. As you know, you have like this on cloud movement at the moment, but if everything by the end is on one big cloud provider, I don't think we are decentralized in the future. So we need to think about, is a data center the right thing for the start? Like, do we have a hybrid strategies if something fell out? So we need to talk to the tech guys. We need to talk to business, like which use case makes sense. How the ecosystem is there? Are there any kind of IoT players there? Is the technology fits to our technology actually? So there are a lot of pre-question what's running there, and as well you have different kind of cities here, and you need to go to every city and get the check mark there. And until this is done, yeah, it's taking a lot of time. And this is where we see as well a kind of like challenge, because you guys are like a rocket, and we feel like we are not even walking. We are like on a little old bicycle, not even a velo, and trying to catch up with you guys.
Yeah, that's a very interesting metaphor, actually. Yeah, Adi?
I think like I mean, just to add on Antonio's points, right? So us starting this Web3 business or this infrastructure part, right? Um, of course, we will have to abide by a lot of the processes already in place for Vodafone for any new businesses, right? And that's why there's a lot of governance processes and all of these things that we have to go through. But I think we should make clear like two things. Like we've been like Vodafone, of course, has been on this blockchain journey since 2017, 2018. We joined the Energy Web chain, the Energy Web Foundation around that time as well. But our project, Digital Asset Broker, I think we announced was last month that we would be creating a joint venture together with Sumitomo Corporation, right? So there's a part of the story where we are doing everything inside Vodafone is doing this journey with us. And then there's this new part of the story which we are on now, where we are actually in a way spinning out of Vodafone, creating a separate company, which is a joint venture with Sumitomo Corporation. And that's where we are going to sit, right? So in this new company, I think we have a bit more freedom on some of the processes that we are putting together. A lot of the processes we are, of course, inheriting from Vodafone, because Vodafone is still the majority shareholder in this company. But I think we have a bit more leeway, right? Normally, the process that Antonio said, there is due diligence, there are sanctions, because there are countries that we're not allowed to work with, right? And then we have our legal team come in and say, oh, there's also a lot of education in Web3, right? There's a lot of like, so who owns Ethereum? Which company owns this protocol? And we're like, this is not a company. Who's the CEO of? So there's a lot of these questions that we go through with our teams to get them to understand that it works slightly differently, right? Like, for example, to be honest, like you don't need a contract to run an Ethereum validator. You just need to do 2F and then go in the long queue now, wait until your validator is approved, right? But from a legal perspective, they are saying like, well, you need to sign a contract first before you can run this, right? So they think there is another party there. Like there's a lot of these discussions that we had to have in the beginning, right? Because people don't understand.
Don't forget the anecdote that the smart contract is not a piece of paper with what you can sign, for example. So this kind of education we had to do. Yes. Sorry, Ali.
Oh, really? Okay. Also, so there are people, they thought that, smart contracts are something to sign, okay. But yeah, that's, so what I hear here is that your own, let's say, your own regulatory landscape, or like sometimes the company is in between you and the innovation, and that your own company culture, company environment is like a hurdle for you guys to really innovate. And now with this new setup, with a new joint venture, you say, okay, we want to basically opt out a little bit to move more freely, or what is the approach here?
I think that's right. I think that's right. But our experience is, I would say, like our experience is probably the same in all of these big enterprises, right? Like when we actually talked to Deutsche Telekom too, and they also had to go through a lot of the same things that we went through as well to get to where they are, right? I imagine it's going to be very similar to any big enterprise as well, right? So I mean, part of the reason is also like the whole thing around cryptocurrency, the unclear regulation, risk mitigation by enterprises. We're not allowed to hold cryptocurrency for investment purposes in Vodafone, right? That's not allowed, right? But and so I think that was a big discussion to understand like what is allowed and what's not allowed, right? And that meant that a lot of the people in our finance and operations and treasury had to understand what exactly are we doing, right? Because as a company, they need to also protect and manage the risks that the company is holding on to, right? So that's why it took a long time to get to these public networks, right? We spent a lot of time building use cases on private chains where there are no tokens, there's no crypto. But on private networks, it's an entirely different concept, right? Like on Ethereum, you hold Ethereum not for investment, but because you have to pay gas to run your smart contract. Otherwise, you cannot run your smart contracts, right? That Ethereum that you hold is because you need to do work, right? You need to run your code on public infrastructure, right? And so it isn't there for us to hold as investment. It's there for us to use because we are providing a service to somebody else, right? To maybe the customer who asks us to deploy or run this code on Ethereum, right? So I think that was a lot of the discussions we had to have internally for our teams to understand. Like, look, it's not like a bunch of guys in one room somewhere in the data center, like collecting tokens, right? We're actually trying to run services, right? Create services on a new infrastructure, which is actually a public infrastructure, right? And so I think that's also a big part of why it took a long time to get to this point. And I think that also comes back to us on digital asset broker, right? We're not on digital asset broker just to run nodes, right? It's not just to run nodes. It's part of our bigger product, which is putting devices on chain, allowing devices to interact with each other, not and to exchange data, including financial data as well, right? And to exchange assets, right? So public networks, Web3 infrastructure, for us is something, it's going to be there, right? You cannot. I think it's pretty clear to most people now that you won't. This boat has sailed. It's not gonna close down, right? You can be part of it and participate in growing it. And so that's what we are trying to do now, right? We're coming more into Web3 with our ideas and our use cases and trying to see how we can use Web3 technology with what we already have together, right? And part of that journey is that we run some Web3 infrastructure as well.
I see, and just to stick to this question and what you just mentioned. So you mentioned that for you guys, it's also like just hard sometimes to run general infrastructure because, I mean, as we all know, you need to own some crypto to set up a validator and to do all of these things. So how did it, like, is there kind of a parameter where you say, okay, at this point it is clearly an investment, at this point it's solely for paying gas, obviously, or setting up a validator, or how did things end up that you were able to experiment at least with the technology without running into regulatory problems? Maybe Tony, you can talk a little bit about this.
So it's always before, as I mentioned, is we need to talk to the business guys. Like, does the chain make sense? Sense for you? Which kind of use cases do you actually want to run on it? And when we understood that, then we can see can we go into incognito mode? Can we have a look? Can we run only the testnet first, where we don't need to go on the production to get the first feelings on that? That is at the moment the approach what we are doing. So don't go in full production mode. First, get to the people and start with testing.
And to get like a good understanding here, what is like full production mode? Because, for example, you could like set up a validator without being in the active set on some networks. but I mean, usually you need like at least some dust to like, this is what we validators call it, some dust to vote on governance proposals, some dust to do some basic things. So is this for you even possible without running into severe discussions with your lawyer, or could you say, okay, we have some room here to innovate? I don't know, we can buy a few ETH, we can buy 0.01 atom or something. Yeah, how much room is there is my question actually.
I think we have the same process like Deutsche Telekom, right? So we have materiality limits in terms of what we can hold in for tokens, but tokens are held only for utility, right? So they are for operational reasons. They're not for investment, right? So it's like you said, it's dust to do the voting, it's dust to do certain things, to move some funds from let's say our like one wallet to another or something like this, right? So you do need like certain tokens for operations, right? So that is okay, but we have a list of materiality limits discussed with our finance teams, for example, and also with our treasury, right? So and we also have like a set of rules given to us from finance about how we need to do the reporting, how much can we hold, how much can we not hold. If we are generating a certain amount of tokens per month, what do we need to do with it? If it's beyond a certain value, how do we report on it and things like this, right? So those are the processes that we needed to put in. I know you mentioned wallets and all of this, right? So we also have like all of processes around approving things. So let's say, and I think this is similar to Deutsche Telekom too. Like, let's say we need some, I don't know, some Ethereum to run some smart contracts or something. We have to get it from our finance team, right? So we need to have a certain level of approval. Maybe below a certain limit, that approval is only like 1%. But if beyond a certain limit, you need 2 levels of approval or even 3, right? So that depends on a case by case basis. So those are all the processes that actually we had to sit down and do over like a number of months and agree with all of the different parties, right? Because from an enterprise perspective, there's a lot of different departments involved. There's treasury involved. There's finance operations involved. But then there's also finance reporting. Then there's also the risk guys who need to manage the controls, right? So because at the end of the year, you have to report what are all of the different controls you have put in and are they running or not, right? So all of these different guys had to come in and we had to coordinate with all of them to agree what can be done, what cannot be done, and what is the process that we would follow, right? So it was a big exercise to just get even to this point, right? But I think we are here. I wouldn't say like it's the most straightforward process, right? Because we've also talked to other validators and they don't need to go through all of this, right? But unfortunately, or fortunately, to some people, we do. But yes, we have a process in place, right? We have to have a process in place in order to make sure that we can correctly manage, monitor, and report on all of these transactions and all of the approvals and controls.
But to answer your question, I think it's like we have some options on Dust, what are kind of like thresholds and limits, and that's where we can operate on. Yes.
Yeah, I think this makes sense, and I think now that we have this clear picture in front of us, let us like maybe dive deeper into also the other aspects that could be tricky for enterprises like you, because it does not only it's not only about like holding crypto. There's like also some other questions that you guys have to take into account. So I would go like one by one now. So first of all, I mean, if you are a staking provider, obviously the assets that people hold and stake with you are, if you want to put it like this, at risk, or you are responsible for them. So say you would, if it's like a DPoS system, so delegated proof of stake system, and I would delegate my, say, Atom to Vodafone, because this is like a typical DPoS system, then if I would do this, you would be like responsible. So if you would get slashed, I would lose my atom. So yeah, how are you dealing with these potential issues? Or I believe there's like at least one lawyer in your companies saying, okay, there might be problems on the horizon if we talk about
The lawyer said no. Essentially,
So
the lawyer said no.
So if you look
Sorry, that's fine.
so we are talking about the risk, right? So what you can do. So if you see at the market or other big protocols or liquid staking, what they're doing at the moment. So what we experience, so there's no fit as a product what we can use. So what people do from our experience, they self-insure. I think they have a little pocket by side. If something happened, they can give it to the delegates. And what our experience is, what a lot of people do, they just like say like, yeah, I'm gonna cover it by myself. I don't have any money or tokens by side where I can like put it to the delegates. Third option is like, if there would be a product at the market, what we are is like where we can think about like a risk mitigation part. That would be something good what we are looking at the moment in. I know there are one or two products, but Yuri, just like putting the question back to you, like how are you guys doing it on Cosmos at the moment, or how are you doing it?
Sorry to just before Yuri answered that, I just want to clarify that we are not doing that right now. We are not offering that kind of service, right?
That's correct.
Because it is at the moment too risky, and basically the lawyer said no, right? The lawyer said, like, if you are a delegator and anyone can delegate on you, what if a sanctioned individual or sanctioned companies drop some tokens on you, right? But it comes from a sanctioned wallet, for example. Then we are flouting some regulations, right? So I think essentially it's exactly the same to Deutsche Telekom. If you look at what DT is doing, which is also like what we would be doing, right, is that we would not accept like this kind of delegations. Of course, on some protocols, you won't be able to say, I cannot accept delegations, but you would say like you would put 100% commission, right? You would take all of the commissions, right? And there's potentially no reason why someone would delegate on you because they won't get anything unless it's malicious, right? So I think that's something that we haven't got any approval for to do that. So that's why we are treading very carefully which networks we are joining and to what level we are participating on those networks, right? Because of that issue where anybody can delegate something on you, but you don't really have control so much about what is delegated on you, right? So for now, we're not really doing that at all. That is something that we are discussing internally, and I think that would be relevant if providing infrastructure or validator service or something like this becomes like a standalone business for us, right? Right now, everything that we do on the infrastructure side is always tied together with digital asset broker as a product, right? But yes, and then on Antonio's point, like I think what you mentioned is the other risk that we are also looking at, right? So the other risk is like, what if we are holding some assets? Either the assets is coming from our shareholders, which would be Vodafone or our shareholder companies or any other shareholders, and then these assets get slashed, right? So that's another risk. What if we are doing this and then for some reason our data center goes down and then we get slashed a certain amount or penalized a certain amount? What do we do in that case, right? So yeah, those are some of the, we are looking at some options. We're talking to a number of people, like, in terms of technical controls you can put in, but also like financial controls, like maybe some kind of slashing insurance, like we talked to Chainproof, for example. No, we are looking at these things and trying to see like how can we design our overall system with these types of controls in place, right? But so far, I mean, you know our announcement on Avalanche, right? That we're going to run a subnet. There's no slashing on Avalanche, so we don't have to solve that problem immediately. But it will come.
Yeah, I think this was like a very valuable insight here, but also to answer you guys' question. So how we do it is we have like kind of a buffer or like an associated fund, so to speak, where we say, okay, if we get slashed, this is where we can take money out of it and pay to all of the delegators that lost money. And then on the other hand, we have like a very, we're like based in Switzerland with FRENS, so it's FRENS AG. So this is how it's clear that it's not me, Yuri, that runs the validator, but it's the FRENS Validator AG, and the AG provides a service. And if the service fails for what reason whatsoever, the AG is able to pay back the people's money. So this is how we basically do it.
Just to turn the interview a bit around. So what we're planning is like we have like technical mitigations like doing the Web3 signer on, so you can double sign, for example, the downtime you can cover with the active passive or active setup. And as well, if there's something coming, you never know about the network. Maybe the client goes wrong. There will be some slashing there. So that's the way where we are like looking into it. Is it similar to you as well?
Pretty much, but again, for us, it's way more straightforward on this side of things. So we run it like also on different servers around the world. We can just like choose a server somewhere in the world and say, okay, we want to use this one. We obviously we also have like backup nodes on every chain. So if there's an update, a crucial update, it's very easy for us to update it. But yeah, our infrastructure is very straightforward. So it's like much less complex. So some of these questions, are not like that relevant for us, I would say. So, but yeah, that's the thing what you mentioned at the beginning with the rocket and with the bicycle. Like our infrastructure again is very straightforward. But yeah, also there's not only the slashing risk, right? There are also like other things that could be interesting for you as an enterprise. So especially the Cosmos ecosystem consists of a lot of blockchains where validators also need to vote on governance proposals. And some of them are like also very controversial from a political standpoint, maybe from an economic side of things. So even if you say, okay, we don't want to be a validator to get delegations and to make money with commissions, even in this case, you need to like position yourself in the community somewhat. Like theoretically, you can also abstain from voting, surely, but how are you handling this? Say there's a super controversial governance proposal.
So I think like on Energy Web, we do have like votes. As a validator, we do have votes for certain like proposals that come in, right? So there is that, right? I think, but so far until very recently, right, we have abstained from voting. So similar to what you see Coinbase and Binance do, I guess, on Cosmos Hub, right? They have just abstained. So far we have done that, right? But I think the idea is now that we have our own Web3 unit, that we and the fact that we want to get involved in the ecosystem, that means I think we will be more active on such things, right? And I think we are also building our own point of view about the kind of ecosystem that we want to have, right? But I think the shift is from Vodafone consuming the network and running the applications on top network as a consumer, right? To Vodafone being, or let's say digital asset broker being part of the network and therefore having responsibility to also have their point of view on where the network is going, right? So I think if we see that the network is going in a certain way that doesn't align with our principles, then we should be going there and having the discussions with the community, and also voting as well as part of the validator group, right? So that's something that we see we will be doing more now that we have our own unit. But before that, historically, we have abstained.
You have abstained, and here's actually like one of very interesting, maybe also controversial question for like some of the traditional Web3 community members. So I mean, when we like zoom out, we have seen like Coinbase running into very similar problems because they are large enterprise, similar to Kraken. So from this perspective, I mean, when is this like something where chains maybe need to consider how they structure their governance system, because there may be like some players that can't participate in this governance system anyway, and it's not the case that the governance system is perfect the way it is. So there was like also this Juno whale drama like around 1 year ago, where you also think, okay, is this actually, could actually validators be sued for voting yes? So what is your opinion of that? Like, not the opinion from Vodafone, but maybe your very personal opinion.
Dudy, you wanna
I'm
start?
still thinking. It's a good question. Let me think about it, and then I will go after you.
So personally, I think if you are part of the active validator group, or you are part of validator group, then you have a responsibility to vote or to be part of the ecosystem, right? And it's not very different from being a shareholder in a company, right? You have certain responsibilities as a director or as a shareholder. There are proposals there, and then you should take part in it, right? Of course, there are certain situations wherein you don't want to vote or you want to abstain, for example, but it doesn't mean that that you just sit back and write it, right? Of course, there's also a valid strategy, right? Like if you're a minority shareholder, and there's not much you can do. But personally, I think being part of ecosystem means that you are there to contribute to the ecosystem, to build things in the ecosystem. It's a totally different mindset from like a consumer and supplier kind of relationship. You're not really like a consumer, and the other person is not really a supplier. You are actually part of the community, right? And and you should be contributing in different ways, right? So as a validator, you would have, for different networks, you would have different responsibilities, right? But you could also contribute in other things. There's a lot of things that people can come in on different ecosystems and do, right? Like, for example, what I understand in Cosmos, you guys now have this consumer chains, right? So
Yes.
and then that you have a vote to whether to have the consumer chain be validated by the active set and Cosmos or not. But someone could come in and say like, all right, well, I'm not a technical person, but maybe I can help make the process of this whole deployment easier, for example, right? I could help organize it or something like this, right? So there's so many things that you can do, just and you don't need to be technical if you are not a technical person, right? So that's my personal point of view.
So just like to, hopefully, Adi, you can hear us again, or just reconnect. So I think she's reconnecting at the moment. So I agree to what Adi said in the most parts. Is like and as we mentioned it before, if we are joining an ecosystem or community, we don't want to only get stuff. We want to as well be part of the community, and part of this as well be responsible. And if you have a vote, you should participate on that. By this saying, I think major votes like if you want to have like a new consumer chain, we are like where we are like actively in. I think this is something where Personally, I want to vote on this if this chain makes sense for me or not, or if I'm there or not. But there are other things in the ecosystem, like how the marketing will be done or smaller activities, where I would say like it's not needed. So if there's an opportunity and it is at the moment that is free for vote or not, I would like agree on this. So like you have like votes what are like you have to vote for, or some proposals there must be like a huge commitment of voting there, and there others is like well smaller, but I think that is these days implemented so far.
Yeah, I think this actually makes a lot of sense. Yeah. But what you just mentioned. So basically, if it's like very pivotal and critical decision that needs to be made for like, especially from a technical perspective, then you think it would make sense to vote. And if it's more like, hey, should we like fund another DAO to determine marketing initiatives, then you would say that you would step back and say, you guys figure it out.
Exactly, or if you want to change the color from A to B, is for us like not there. But if there's something votes on it, what is like put us in a regulatory gray space or in a red flag space, then we need to communicate this, and this is something where we need a space. It means like if you want to work with, for example, what Adi take as a really stupid example, if there includes a country what's sanction-based, where we're not allowed to do business with, then we cannot be. That is like for us, we cannot do this. Then that is where we need a space to communicate to you. That's it.
I see. Yeah, makes a lot of sense. And since we're like also getting closer to the hour now, I want to like merge this one question a little bit. And speaking of the merge here, so I mean, you also mentioned a lot of times in the interview that you know how things are with the Deutsche Telekom, for example. So generally, what are your thoughts right now on Web2 companies entering the Web3 space? I mean, right now, the press does not look, very appealing. Like in 2021, everyone was like screaming Web3, Web3, everyone joined Web3. And now it's more like, well, I'm not too sure if this enterprise should enter Web3 anymore. So how do you view it? What are the talks with other enterprises? And also to merge this question with the merge, did the merge give more confidence specifically for the proof of stake sector to say, okay, eventually right now everything looks not that great right now, but from a technical perspective, look, the merge was shipped successfully. There is some hope on the horizon, so to speak.
I think if you what you need to add from my point of view, the regulatory space is coming into the space, and when you have more and more regulatories, as we saw, I think what this week, some major news in the US is this something what the enterprise needs to have to go in, and I think what in the past what we as well made with the private chains is we are trying to understand where we can adopt to it. It's like the example when the internet came up, building use cases, and then we saw like, hey, actually what we cannot do is like having the use cases or the businesses, what we do at the moment, we cannot one-to-one replicate on the public chain. This can be done, but this leads to a lot of efforts, to a lot of cost, and I think no one will appreciate this. So how I see it, that you need to deal with Web3 like a new animal, what it is, and you need to understand how it works and see what kind of capabilities do you have as an enterprise and how you can participate this on the proper way, as not trying to have processes what are there like for the last 50 years and like optimize it to the perfect way to just like copy it there. And if you see the merge, you mentioned the Ethereum merge, right? So far?
Yes.
This is for us like simpler because of course, the sustainability question what we have been asked as well. For us, it's easier to get in because from the structure itself, it's easier, and as well from the technical part, it's easier to participate on that. Just want to ask Adi, do you hear us again?
Yes. Sorry,
Okay.
I had some issues.
No problem.
For me, like on like sort of Web3 adoption, I I think we are seeing this happening more and more, right? Definitely, there's a lot of fear around like cryptocurrencies, regulations. And we all know that this industry um, does have a lot of like weird stuff and scams and all of these things, right? So so I think businesses are still treading very carefully. The fact that there are regulations coming to make things clearer, that would help um, like businesses understand how they can play in the space, right? So I've had like people from different enterprises come to me and say, "Hey, from a company perspective, we are, we don't want to touch this. But personally, I have bitcoins." I have people from big enterprises come to me saying things like that, right? And that's because businesses need like clear regulations and stable regulations to know what they can and cannot do, right? So Antonio mentioned the US. I think the regulatory space there is unclear and also unstable, right? What was okay before, a few years later, it's not okay anymore. So it's hard to run a business in that kind of like regime, right? So, but I think there is like increasing adoption um, coming in different places, right? Despite all of the craziness and hype around NFT, I think NFT fundamentally change a lot of the ways for businesses and organizations thinking about Web3, right? NFT suddenly allowed businesses to 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 think of a different way how they can engage their customers, right? That they wouldn't have been able to do before, right? And I think that accelerated a lot, like this whole digitalization of, say, customer rewards, loyalty, engagement. So we see a lot of companies like playing in that space right now, or trying that space, right? Because that part, like this NFT part, in terms of customer experience engagement, it's a clear stack in that whole game of how you can interact differently with your customers. So things like that. I think we would see like developments happening there. There's a lot of like you know discussions we've had around like supply chain and things like this as well, right? So we've run a number of use cases on blockchain, on private networks mainly, right? And the reason why a lot of them, I mean, there's a few that still are ongoing, but there's a lot of them that then stop is because of adoption, right? So if you're trying to run a private network and then you only have that, and you're setting up all the nodes yourself, and you're setting up all the infrastructure yourself, and you're going to other businesses and say, "Hey, come and join my network," and build something on it, right? And a lot of those businesses might not want to run infra because they're used to the software as a service mentality, right? They're just like, all right, I'm using the software, I'm a software consumer, I'm not part of a network, right? So they don't want to invest into running their own infra, because for a business it means not just running the infra, hiring the people, providing service, making sure things are up. So there's a lot of things involved there, right? So a lot of businesses then are like, okay, yeah, blockchain is interesting. I want to use the application, but I don't really want to run the network. Like, so a lot of these private chains then kind of like close down because it's so hard to grow the network, right? And then it doesn't make sense if you're building an application and you are running the network yourself. So if you're running like 10 nodes yourself, it's not a decentralized network, right? You could actually just build the application without the blockchain layer, right? So that's a lot of things, a lot of the experiences that we've seen on this journey, which is also why for us it makes sense to go on Web3, because on Web3 it's public. You have validators all around the world running infrastructure. They are being incentivized, by the rewards on the network for providing this service, right? If we come in and all we want to do is build an application, then we can build applications on those networks, right? We pay for the usage of the network, right? but we don't have to build the entire network, right? So for us, it's a case of looking at like what's our goal, right? If our goal is just application, or let's say like I think this was an example we always use, or something like if all I want is to send like some bread from my bakery in town A to town B, I would just invest in a car to carry my bread from these two cities. Why should I build the highway between them, right? And the highway is that infrastructure. So if the highway is already there, I should just use it, right? Instead of building it from scratch. And that is if you just want to play the application game. But if you just want, if you want to do more, right? If you actually want to be part of a network, or you want to create your own network, it's a totally different game, right? So I think a lot of businesses need to make that distinction. What are they trying to do? And what is the total cost of ownership, right? And that's not just the cost of building applications. It's also, if you are going to run a network, it's the cost of running the infrastructure, maintaining it, all the people around it, and also coordinating between the different parties on the network, right? So like you said, there are governance votes and things like this. So sometimes there are some things that's faster in the business because we don't need like 175 people to agree with us on certain things. We just do it as part of business, right? But when you are part of a network, it's a different game, right? So I think we need to clarify from Web2 companies, like what are you actually trying to do on Web3, and then understand like how to come in, right? Because actually there's a lot of tools and everything that has been created in Web3 that can be easily consumed, right? You can just use some APIs to send like you can use just Infura and stuff. You don't need to run your own node, for example, right? You just want to make a simple application. So these are things that I think Web2 companies are starting to understand better. And they're thinking more about how can we use this technology. But I think the most important thing is that you don't use this technology to replace what you are already doing, but actually it should be extending what you are doing, right? And I think for us that is how we are also approaching it. Us on Digital Asset Broker being part of Web3 networks is an extension of what we want to do, right? Not like replacing what we are already doing.
Yeah.
And
this,
yeah.
Sorry, yes, Yuri, you first.
No, you first. All good.
I forgot what to say. Everything good.
Okay, then I actually have a question for you because I wanted to pick this up what Adi just said. Is speaking of like extension and expansion. So, I mean, as of now, you are experimenting a little bit around, and I mean, we met at Avalanche Summit, so there are some things going on at the Avalanche side of things. But yeah, general question for the wrap up: what like are you planning to expand now to other ecosystems as well? And what is the procedure speed here generally? So obviously you can't talk about names as I can imagine, but yeah, what is the procedure speed here, and are you planning to onboard more networks anytime soon?
So personally, I'm just hungry and want to as well talk to as much protocols as I can, but we are time limited, and as you know, there's a process there. We have at the moment a funnel there, and we are talking to the protocols where we're interested, but we are as well happy to get protocols coming to us and approaching us as well, because it's like for us, every time a new protocol comes, we are getting a bit excited, Adi and me, and want to be part of that. From the approach perspective, we need to as well, as we mentioned, we have the standard thing with legal. We need to have the buy-in, and as well, it's not only experimenting. It's like understand where the ecosystem wants to go and how we can build a new use case, what makes sense for the ecosystem. That's where I want to say what Adi said. It's not about replicating what we had on the network. It's like we have to build something Web3 specific, otherwise it won't work. Just replicating what we did before and just copy it one to one won't make an impact for us.
I see. Yeah, I think makes a lot of sense. But yeah, so clearly you are observing the staking industry very closely, and personally, you guys are very excited, and you try to speed up as much as possible, sticking to this metaphor you mentioned in the beginning, Antonio, with the bicycle versus rocket. So yeah, very last question: when will Vodafone become a rocket, or will this ever be the case?
Uh, I don't know if our goal is to become a rocket, but I mean, we certainly would like to help connect more businesses to Web3, right, and to use this technology. But in a way, we're seeing like, the rise of digital assets, like native digital assets, and also like real world assets, that are coming on chain. And I think our goal would be to see how we can expedite this process by providing like platforms and tools for businesses to use in order to make this transition, right? Um, so I think that will be our goal. Maybe is more to say like, how can we help other businesses get on Web3, right? What are some of the blockers that they need in order to move into Web3, to put their assets on chain, and to do things with those assets, right? So some examples would be, so we've been doing a lot of stuff on mobility, for example, right? Let's say like car to car communications, cars paying for things with their own digital wallets. I think the other thing would also be like, well, what if you can just put your car as an entity on chain, right? And then that car can be used as collateral for, let's say, a loan for your business, for example, right? So those are the things that we are exploring right now, and we're talking to businesses that have a lot of these assets, right? Um, and what are the things that are stopping them from doing this on chain, right? And we're trying to build things that would reduce that friction and allow them to engage more with each other. So I'd say that's what we're trying to do. Don't know whether we will be the fastest, but that will be our goal.
Yes, I think, yes. And as Adi said, I think it's not our goal to be the fastest. I think for us, it's more important to be a reliable partner on that. And I think what we want to do, and I think I speak for Adi, is like building trust into this ecosystem. And I think this is what the overall Web3 space needs to get more trusted partners. And that is where we can come in with our brand and put like trust. We can connect digital assets and put it trustworthy on the chain. And I think this is I don't want to say niche, but this is where we want to play. And we won't compete of being the rocket, because we are a rather fast follower here, and see like how we can give the trust to the people to leverage the other capabilities to grow the space. So more as an enabler here. That is how I want to say it.
Yeah, I think that's a very, very nice way to portray it, and also to wrap it up. So that you really want to that you really want to connect these two worlds, and you really mentioned that we need more trust in the space. Especially, I think we had these discussions over and over again in 2022, right? So I think this is like a very, very crucial part here. And we also recorded interviews with other like bigger institutions that were saying, hey, we cannot actually bring our assets on chain due to regulatory questions. So this is exactly where you guys, for example, could step in. But yeah, guys, I think this was a very, very insightful interview. We got a lot of insights what you guys are doing, and I think this sounds very exciting that you are expanding more into the Web3 space, that you are start providing more and more crucial infrastructure for the entire staking industry. So yeah, Adi, Antonio, thank you so much for joining and sharing these valuable insights with us. And yeah, I hope I see you very, very soon.
Thank you, Yuri. Thank you so much. Thanks for having us on the show.
Yeah, thank you, Yuri, as well from me, and happy to have the interview with the part 2 in the next month.